There was a man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite from the hill country Ephraim, named Elkanah, son of Jehoham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuth, an Ephraimite. He had two wives named Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah was childless. This man used to go up from his own town every year to worship and offer sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Sheol. There Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day Elkanah sacrificed, he gave several shares of meat to his wife, Peninnah, with all her sons and daughters. But although he loved Hannah, he gave her only one share, because the Lord had not granted her children. Further, Hannah's rival used to torment her and humiliate her, because she had no children. Year after year this happened. When they went up to the house of the Lord, her rival used to torment her. Once, when she was in tears and would not eat, her husband Elkanah said to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" After they had finished eating and drinking at the sacrifice at Sheol, Hannah rose in deep distress and stood before the Lord and prayed to him, weeping bitterly. Meanwhile, Eli the priest was sitting on his seat beside the door of the temple of the Lord. Hannah made a vow in these words: "O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt deign to take notice of my trouble and remember me, if thou wilt not forget me, but grant me offspring, then I will give the child to the Lord for his whole life, and no razor shall ever touch his head." For a long time she went on praying before the Lord, while Eli watched her lips. Hannah was praying silently, but although her voice could not be heard, her lips moving, and Eli took her for a drunken woman. He said to her,
"How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine."
"I have drunk no wine or strong drink. I have been pouring out my heart before the Lord. Do not think of me so degraded, sir. All this time I have been speaking out of the fullness of my grief and misery."
Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant what you have asked him for.
Kindness. And she went away and took something to eat, no longer downcast. Next morning they were up early, and after prostrating themselves before the Lord, returned to the house at Ramah. Elkanah had intercourse with his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. She conceived, and in due time bore a son, whom she named Samuel, because she said, "I asked the Lord for him." Elkanah, with his whole household, went up to make the annual sacrifice to the Lord, and to redeem his vow. Hannah did not go with them, but said to her husband, "When the child is weaned, I will come up with him to enter the presence of the Lord, and he shall stay there always." Her husband Elkanah said to her, "Do what seems best to you. Stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed and nursed her son until she had weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her. She also took a bull 3 years old, an ephah of meal, and a flagon of wine, and brought him, child as he was, into the house of the Lord at Shiloh. They slaughtered the bull, and brought the boy to Eli. Hannah said to him, So as sure as you live, I am the woman who stood near you praying to the Lord. It was this boy that I prayed for, and the Lord has given me what I asked. What I asked I have received, and I now lend him to the Lord. For his whole life he is lent to the Lord. And they prostrated themselves before the Lord. Then Hannah offered this prayer. My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord I now hold my head high. My mouth is full of derision of my foes, exultation, because thou hast saved me. There is none except thee, none so holy as the Lord, no rock like our God. Cease your proud boasting, let no word of arrogance pass your lips. For the Lord is a God of all knowledge, he governs all that men do. Strong men stand mute in display, but those who are flattered put on new strength. Those who had plenty sell themselves for a crust, and the hungry go strong again. The barren woman has 7 children, and the mother of many sons is left to languish. The Lord kills, and he gives life. He sends down to Sheol. He can bring up the dead again. The Lord makes a man poor, he makes him rich. He brings down and he rises up. He lifts the weak out of the dust and rises the poor from the dunghill, to give them a place among the great, to set them in seats of honor. For fountains of the earth are the Lord's, and he has built the world upon them. He will guard the footsteps of his saints. Will the wicked sink into silence and gloom? Not by mere strength shall a man prevail. Those that stand against the Lord will be terrified when the high God thunders out of heaven. The Lord is judge even to the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king, and rise high the head of his anointed prince. Then Elkanah went to Ramah with his household, but the boy remained behind in the service of the Lord under Eli the priest. Now Eli's sons were scoundrels and had no regard for the Lord. The custom of the priests in their dealing with the people was this: when a man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come while the flesh was stewing and thrust a 3-pronged fork into the cauldron or pan or kettle or pot, and the priest would take whatever the fork brought out. This should have been their practice whenever Israelites came to sacrifice at Sheol. But now under Eli's sons, even before the fat was burnt, the priest's servant came and said to the man who was sacrificing, "Give me meat to roast for the priest." He will not accept what has already been stewed, only raw meat. And if the man answered, "Let me burn the fat first, and then take what you want," he said, "No, give it to me now, or I will take it by force." The young man's sin was very great in the Lord's eyes, for they brought the Lord's sacrifice into general contempt. Samuel continued in the service of the Lord, a mere boy with linen ephod fashioned around him. Every year his mother made him a little cloak and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. Eli would give his blessing to Elkanah and his wife and say, "The Lord grant you children by this woman in place of the one for which you asked him." Then they went home again. The Lord showed his care for Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Eli, now a very old man, had heard how his sons were treating all the Israelites, and how they lay with the women who were serving at the entrance to the tent of the presence. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from the people how wickedly you behave. For all this they did not listen to their father's rebuke, for the Lord meant that they should die. But young Samuel, as he grew up, commended himself to the Lord and to men." Now a man of God came to Eli and said, "This is the word of the Lord. You know that I have revealed myself to your forefathers when he and his family were in Egypt in slavery in the house of Pharaoh. You know that I chose him from all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to mount the steps of my altar, to burn sacrifices, and to carry the ephod before me, and that I assigned all the food offerings of the Israelites to your family. Why then do you show disrespect for my sacrifices and offerings which I have ordained? What makes you resent them? Why do you honor your sons more than me by letting them batten on choicest offerings of my people Israel?" The Lord's word was, "I promise that your house and your father's house shall serve before me for all time." But now his word is, "I will have no such thing. I will honor those who honor me, and those who despise me shall meet with contempt. The time is coming when I will lop off every limb of your own and your father's family, so that no man in your house shall come to old age. You will even resent the prosperity I give to Israel. Never again shall there be an old man in your house. If I allow any to survive to serve my altar, his eyes will grow dim, and his appetite fail. His issue will be weaklings and die off. The fate of your 2 sons shall be assigned to you. Hophni and Phinehas shall both die on the same day. I will appoint for myself a priest who will be faithful, and will do what I have in my mind and in my heart. I will establish his family to serve in perpetual succession before my anointed king. Any of your family that still live will come and bow humbly before him to beg a fee, a piece of silver and a loaf, and will ask for a torn of priestly duty to earn a crust of bread. So the child Samuel was in the Lord's service under his master Eli. Now, in those days, the word of the Lord was seldom heard, and no vision was granted. But one night, Eli, whose eyes were dim and his sight failing, was lying down in his usual place, while Samuel slept in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. Before the lamp of God had gone out, the Lord called him, and Samuel answered, "Here I am. Here I am. You called me." "No, I did not hear you," said Eli. "Lie down again." So he went and lay down. The Lord called Samuel again. He got up and went to Eli. "Here I am, you called me," he said. "I did not call, my son," he answered. "Lie down again." Now Samuel had not yet come to know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not been disclosed to him. When the Lord called him for the third time, he again went to Eli and said, Then Eli understood that the Lord was calling the child. He told Samuel to go and lie down, and said, "If he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, thy servant hears thee.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there and called, "Samuel, Samuel," as before. Samuel answered, "Speak. Speak, for your servant is listening." "Soon I will do in Israel which will wring the ears of all who hear it. When that day comes, I will make good every word I have spoken against Eli and his family from beginning to end. You are to tell him that my judgment on his house shall stand forever, because he knew of his son's blasphemies against God, and did not rebuke them. Therefore I have sworn to the family of Eli that their abuse of sacrifices and offerings shall never be expiated. Samuel lay down till morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. But he was afraid to tell Eli about the vision. Eli called him, and he, "Samuel, my son." "Here I am." Eli asked, "What is it he said to you?" "Do not hide it from me. May God deal with you, and be it ever so severely, if you hide from me anything he told you." Then Samuel told him everything, and hid nothing. Eli said, "He is the Lord.
Let him do what is good in his eyes.
As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and none of his words went unfulfilled. From Dan to Bathsheba, all Israel recognized that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. So the Lord continued to appear in Sheol, because he had revealed himself there to Samuel. So Samuel's words had authority throughout Israel. And the time came when the Philistines mustered for battle against Israel, and the Israelites went out to meet them. The Israelites encamped at Eben Ezer, and the Philistines at Aphek. The Philistines drew up their lines facing the Israelites, and when they joined battle, the Israelites were routed by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field. When the army got back to the camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord let us be routed by the Philistines? Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh to go with us and deliver us from the power of our enemies." So the people set out to Shiloh and fetched the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who was enthroned upon the cherubim. Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark. When the ark came into the camp, all the Israelites greeted it with a great shout, and the earth rang with the shouting. The Philistines heard the noise and asked, What is this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews?" When they knew that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, they were afraid and cried, "A god has come into the camp. We are lost. No such thing has ever happened before. We are utterly lost. Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the very gods who broke the Egyptians and crushed them in the wilderness. Courage, Philistines, and act like men, or you will become slaves to the Hebrews, as they were yours. Be men. Fight." The Philistines then gave battle, and the Israelites were defeated and fled to their homes. It was a great defeat. And 30,000 Israelite foot soldiers perished. The ark of God was taken, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed. A Benjamite ran from the battlefield and reached Shiloh on the same day, his clothes rent and dust on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on a seat by the road to Mizpah, for he was deeply troubled about the ark of God. The man entered the city with his news, and all the people cried out in horror. When Eli heard it, he asked, "What is the meaning of this uproar?" The man hurried to Eli and told him. Eli was 98 years old and sat staring with sightless eyes. So the man said to him, "I am a man who has just arrived from the battle. This very day I have escaped from the field." Eli asked, "What happened, my son?" The runner answered, "The Israelites have fled from the Philistines. Utter panic has struck the army. Your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas are killed, and the ark of God is taken.